Good afternoon. Let's see if we can get some more bodies. For those that are here on time, if you can unmute yourself and let me know if there's anything in particular you'd like me to talk about in working with buyers.
Yeah, hi, this is Dan Pilson.
Hi, Dan.
Yeah, I just was wondering, I guess everything, I know the COVID thing is, hopefully moving, beyond COVID and beyond this. So is that more or less restrictions, more or less gone pretty much, or quite a bit of it gone?
Yes, as far as the paperwork, yes.
Right. That's all, that's gone. Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha. Good.
Yeah, so the only concern is if your client, I mean, obviously your client can say, hey, we want everybody to wear a mask and put restrictions on it. But as far as your showings, there's no restrictions and no additional paperwork needed.
Okay, so just normal, going back to before COVID.
Yeah.
Good. Good to hear.
Any other questions, anything particular that you'd like to go through? So on our list here, we've got this scheduled working with buyers, pre-qualifying, showing properties, presenting offers. I'd rather just talk about stuff that interests you rather than just going through my my checklist here.
Show them the website.
Yeah, thank you, Danny. Okay, I'm not hearing anything. What do you think about going back to live meetings? We're thinking maybe next Thursday, doing live meetings. Any comments? I just get a lot more feedback when I have live workshops or live training. So we may try that. Okay, I'm not hearing anything. I'll just go through some basics and maybe answer some questions here. So on our website, make sure you check out our buyer booklet. We actually have about 6 or 7 different booklets. There's 3 or 4 working with the buyer, then there's 3 or 4 working with sellers, and you can print these out. I suggest doing the cover and maybe your last page of your resume in color so that it looks nice. But all the interior pages, you could just print them out. You can bind them here in the office, but it's always nice to have some information to give to your buyers, your potential buyers or potential sellers when you meet with them. So again, we have 3 or 4 different buyer booklets. Danny's showing you a sample here of one. These are all done in Word documents, so you can personalize it. We've got them written up as Adam Agent, but you can personalize that yourself. And the information is really good in here. Specifically for this class, so this buyer booklet is kind of like the CMA that you use for a seller, except it's obviously it's geared for the buyer. And in that, it shows what an agent goes through when you have a new buyer that's trying to find a home. And more importantly, it also gives you some forms in here. It's not like the 80-90 pages of disclosures that's in our zip form booklet, but in our buyer booklet, it does have the purchase agreement and some of the disclosures like the agency and the buyer broker representation agreement. So these forms I think are real important that you give to the buyer ahead of them actually wanting to buy a property, because I like to always spend a couple minutes and just kind of flip through the booklet and say, hey, when you get to the point where you want to put an offer in a house, we have a 10-page form, and I usually tell them the story that, you know, I'm so old, when I started, it was 1 page, and it's grown to 10 pages, and next year it's going to be 16 pages. And so I put a blank form in this buyer booklet, so it gives the buyers the opportunity to read through it if they have questions. I've really never had a buyer ask any questions on these forms, but what it does is it gives them, it lets them know that you're very above board, very transparent, that you're showing them all the paperwork. You know, there's nothing worse than when you're going in to buy something and you got this 3-page, 4-page, whatever contract that you're supposed to read and sign. Well, now you're giving it to them ahead of time. So it builds that trust and like between you and your client. So that's included in this. And if you look at the bottom of this page under buyer's booklet, you'll see the other booklets that we have there. Actually, there's 6 of them listed. So you can print any of these off. Again, all you'll need to do is just personalize that first page and that last page with your information. These are all done in Microsoft Word, so it's very easy to personalize these. If you have any problems with that, see me or see Danny in the office, and we'll be glad to help you with that. Okay, any questions on the buyer booklet? Okay, so let's talk a little bit, since we're recording this. The biggest concern today in working with buyers is getting offers accepted. Most properties, especially if they're brand new on the market, have multiple offers if it's a good deal. And we get questions, Danny and I, we get questions almost on a daily basis about how to write that best offer because their buyers keep getting rejected. So let's talk about that. And again, if you have questions, please interrupt me. Otherwise, we'll go through this. And if I'm not getting any feedback, I'll just move on. In your purchase agreement, there's 3 conditions. There's a appraisal condition, a loan condition, and an inspection condition. And as you can see in our zip forms booklet that's on our website, where we have these completed, they're filled out, that you can use as a template. One of the things that I always recommend is that when you're writing a counteroffer, that you're very specific as to when these conditions are going to be removed. Personally, I think they should all have the same date, because if everything, let's say, is 14 days, even though the appraisal may have been done and the loan may have been approved, the buyer can still back out if he says, hey, I don't like the color of the back room, the way it's painted, or you know, you can have any excuse at all and back out. The buyers have to remove all conditions. They have to sign that contingency removal form before they're actually committed and have the chance of losing their earnest money deposit. So those conditions are real important. So what we're seeing now in order to get offers accepted is sellers are being, and the seller's agents want these offers to either not have any conditions in them, or that they're all going to be removed within just a few days. So how do you do that? Comments? Well, I'll tell you a couple stories. My middle son, when he was buying his first place, he was looking for a condo, buying it under FHA terms. You know, he only had the 3%, it's actually 3.5% down payment now. And the market was pretty hot. This is back when we had a lot of bank sales that were on the market, and a lot of people were on the market that were paying cash for property. So it was similar to this market in that there were a lot of multiple offers. When you have a buyer that has limited funds and is stretching to buy their first home, like for my son's example, it's difficult to compete. And I think we put out about a dozen or so offers. So the key to finding a home for a buyer in this position, instead of looking at a brand new listing that's come on the market that's got multiple offers, try to find something that has been on the market for a few weeks, where the seller may be a little more negotiable, and you're not going to have the competition of these all cash, high down payment, no condition buyers. So that's really the best advice I can give you for those marginal buyers that you're working with in today's marketplace. If you have a good buyer, a well-qualified buyer, again, that means that you've met with Jonathan, you've gone through that pre-approval process, and hopefully actually have those buyers underwritten so that they are formally approved, subject to an appraisal on the property. So in case you're not familiar with that, you know, in the old days, we would get pre-qualifications, and lenders basically, to pre-qualify a buyer, they'll just talk to them on the phone, ask them what they make, ask some questions about, you know, what their FICO, what their credit score is, how long you've been on the job. They'll run some numbers, and they will write a pre-qualification. So obviously, if you're representing a seller, you're not going to put much weight on a pre-qual on a buyer versus a formal approval. So it's important in today's market, especially, that you spend the time, the buyer spends the time with the lender and gets this formal approval. Jonathan can actually do it within just a few days, providing that the buyer is going to give him tax returns and answers questions, and give him all the paperwork that he needs. He will write that pre-approval, and he can also get that loan underwritten so that it's only subject to an appraisal. And that's obviously going to take a few days, but that's what's needed today if you want to compete with a new listing on the market. So the idea is that you can go in with this underwritten approval, and in order to actually close, you're only going to need that appraisal, you know, draw loan docs and go through that paperwork process to close. So the three conditions, as far as the inspections, the loan, and the appraisal, can still be in the contract, but you want to shorten that period. If the buyer is well qualified and he has additional cash, let's say he's putting 20% down, and he can put a little bit more down in case the appraisal comes in light, then I would recommend not having an appraisal condition and not having a loan condition, because the buyer's already formally approved. The only thing, again, that has to happen is that appraisal has to come in. And if it's $1 million property and the appraisal comes in, let's say at 980, worst case is it's an extra 20,000 down when they're putting 200,000 down. So you've got to have the type of buyer that can do that in order to waive that appraisal. But if you have that type of buyer, Jonathan can close in less than 30 days as far as an escrow period, and the only condition that you would need would be for an inspection. And how long does that take? Well, as you know, most of our inspectors can get out within 2 or 3 days. So if you put a 5-day or a 7-day condition on the property, then and close in 20 days or 30 days, you've got yourself a very competitive offer. You can even compete with these all cash offers. Most of the all cash offers, as you know, will usually come in at a lesser price. So you can beat them out by having great terms and offering a good price. So you got to do your homework. You got to have these buyers be pre-approved, formally approved, so that you can waive that appraisal and loan condition. Questions? Give me some feedback.
Want to talk about the dates? Let's put on that.
Oh, okay. When you write an offer, as you'll see in our zip forms booklet, the sample that's in there, I typically write an offer 30 days for an escrow period, and seller to select services. When I'm representing the seller and I receive an offer like that, and I put my seller's hat on, I want to spell out who those service providers are. So obviously, if it's a TRG listing, we're going to have Coach House Escrow. We're going to use California Best Title, Fidelity Home Warranty. So you're going to spell those out. But more importantly, in my opinion, is you need to have the dates clarified in that counteroffer. And we have too many agents that don't understand the process. And so I always, on my counteroffers, I will put specific dates that all conditions are to be removed by July 10th, right? So that way there's no misunderstanding as to if it was a 10-day condition as to, well, does that start, when escrow is open, or does that start after the seller signed the paperwork, or does that start on Monday since, Sundays was a holiday. So always use dates and be very specific on your close of escrow and for releasing those contingencies. It makes it real easy if you're removing all contingencies, let's say in 7 days, because you would just pick on the calendar a date and say all conditions to be removed. I believe it's 2IJ and 14B2, is it, or B1? But all of those 3 conditions are going to be removed by July 10th. So it makes it very clear to all parties when those conditions are removed. Same as that escrow, you want to make sure that the close of escrow, that date is I prefer a Tuesday through Friday for a close of escrow. We don't want to close on a Monday because that means the buyer has to fund on Friday and they lose a couple of days of interest. So you pick a Tuesday through Friday when there's no holidays on those weekdays for the escrow close. All right. Where'd you get that timeline, Danny? That looks good.
So add on, it's all on, you want to talk about the dates. So all these are based on like our best offer that we write. So with a 10-day inspection, where you can see if the offer is accepted on the 8th, we have business days, we're actually getting until the 21st. So going back to your counter offer, it's always better to write a date than count dates.
Yeah, the way the purchase agreement, the way the RPAs are written is that if there's any dates that fall on a weekend or a holiday, it goes on to the next business day. So for example, what that means is if you have a 10-day condition in there to remove, you have a 10-day period to remove all conditions. If that 10 days is up, let's say on Friday, right? On Friday, the 16th of July, let's say. What most agents will do, come Friday, they haven't heard anything, so they'll then issue a notice to perform, which the contract states has to give the buyers 2 days to respond to that. Because of Saturday and Sunday, they would have until Monday to respond. If the time frame was on, let's say, a Thursday and the 2 days falls on a Saturday, then that would give them until Monday. So you're basically giving those clients 4 days to respond before the seller can actually cancel that transaction. So you need to be proactive. If it's on let's say on a Thursday, you need to give that notice to perform on the prior Tuesday. So you can give it up to 2 days prior to the due date, so that come Thursday, you can actually give that notice to, I'm sorry, you're giving the notice to perform on Tuesday, so that Thursday, when they're supposed to remove all conditions, that seller can actually do a cancellation of contract, that CC form. So you just got to be on top of the time frame and know the dates. The other important thing about when you're putting a date in the counteroffer or in that RPA, it just clarifies everything for everyone, and it will make that transaction much smoother. You know, when you have a 30-day escrow and it happens to fall on a Saturday, it's been my experience that, you know, one party wants to move in on Friday and the other one wants to move out on Sunday and let the property, you know, let the buyers take the property on Monday. So it avoids further negotiations just by knowing how to professionally handle this paperwork in advance. All right, any other questions? You guys, you got to give me some feedback because otherwise I don't know what to how to proceed here. Any questions on anything?
Can I talk about love letters?
Okay, thank you, Danny. I've always taught that when I'm representing a buyer, for the buyer to write a personal letter, especially if it's your typical family where they have kids, because I've actually had transactions where sellers have chosen young buyers that are starting out on a family over other investors or developers. They've taken less money, they've been more flexible because they want, especially if you have an older couple or an older family that's selling their house, they want these new buyers to enjoy the home like they have for decades in raising their families. So I've always taught that it's very important to give these what the CAR now calls love letters to your seller. Unfortunately, over this last year, or fortunately, I guess, CAR has basically said, hey, this is a no-no. We cannot do this because of fair housing laws. And there's a lot of agents, the savvy veteran sellers agents out there will not present love letters to their clients. They don't want their seller to be in a position where they're making a decision based on a protected class. So where they're giving someone unfair advantage over another buyer, maybe because that other buyer doesn't have children or is not married or may not be
Christmas morning, as they say.
yeah. So there's lots of articles. CAR. This is a good one that Danny has up here on the screen. But if you go to the CAR website, they have a one-page quick, what do they call it? Quick.
Your last questions.
Well, anyway, they've got. Yeah, it's a quick guide. So it is a quick guide. They have good information on these love letters. And so I've got to agree. I mean, that's the law. So we don't want to put our seller in jeopardy. And even if they do not make that decision based on a love letter, you don't want the accusation. Just the accusation can cause lots of problems, attorneys and stuff that we don't want. Quick guide. Thank you. This quick guide. That we don't want to have to put our clients in jeopardy that way. However, having said that, you can still do a letter about the buyer. In other words, you can talk about stuff that's not a protected class. So that would mean if the buyer is well qualified, you want to show that they have lots of cash in the bank. You can show statements. You black out the account numbers on those statements. But for example, if they're putting $100,000 down, and you can show $200,000 or $300,000 in banks or savings or investments, then I would definitely show that. If they have a high FICO score, I would show that. You can get a printout from the buyer's lender on that FICO. So show stuff that is unbiased but does not deal with these protected classes and race, color, ancestry, national origin, religion, sex. There's 22 of them. There's 22 protected classes now. But you still want to brag about your buyer being well qualified. Another point on that qualification, if you have a buyer and you're looking, let's say, for a $700,000 house, I still see a lot of agents going to their lender and they get a pre-approval at $700,000. I don't understand that. If the buyer, let's say, can qualify for $800,000, have the lender write the pre-qual for $800,000. Especially in a market like this, when we have multiple offers. Again, I'm typically a seller's agent. I look at a lot of offers that come in. If I have a handful of offers and I've got 4 or 5 of them here, and they all have pre-approvals at list price, and I have another guy over here that's can qualify for $200,000 or $300,000 more, who are you going to go with, right? To me, it makes no sense to go with some buyer that can just barely qualify for that property. In other words, make your buyer look as strong as possible. Historically, buyers agents, they don't want to show their hand. They only want to show that they can qualify for it. But in this marketplace, that doesn't work. You want to have your buyer look as good as possible. You have another comment, Danny?
Is there like job security, how long they work somewhere, stuff like that?
Yeah, you can talk about their job. You just got to be careful and don't get into any of these protected classes.
They're all listed right there.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, you guys got to give me some feedback. Otherwise, I'm done here. Any other questions, comments, anything that you have concerns of? Anything off topic? You've got me here.
Yeah, so you can still do the, if you keep away from these protected
Yeah,
classes,
you can still do the love letters. Yeah, you just can't talk about any of the protected classes.
Okay, thank you.
So it's going to be difficult. And they've got a really good example there, which is what I used to do. I mean, I used to do that where, you write this great letter saying, oh, my buyers, they just can't wait until Christmas, until the kids can come running down the stairs and look at the beautiful Christmas tree in your foyer. And so, you're hitting on religion, you're hitting on familial status, you're hitting on all these protected classes. So that nowadays is a no-no. And the smart professional seller's agent will not show those to their seller because they don't want their seller to use that as a way to qualify one buyer over another.
So just a thing about family, of course, many times people have family. Is that totally off limits?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, when you talk to the CAR attorneys, yeah, it's off limits. Now, that doesn't mean that, if your seller asks questions, about the buyer and you know them, then you can answer them. But I wouldn't, when I'm representing a buyer, I wouldn't be selling that that they've got, 6 kids and they're Mormon, for example. And the seller happens to be Mormon also. So you can see how that may impact their decision. And I've experienced that over the years where it has. It definitely has impacted decisions. So you just don't want the threat of a lawsuit or litigation because of these disclosures.
So just to follow up a little bit. So the family, okay, there's of course the family, immediate family of obviously the children and spouse and so on. But then of course you have an overall family, where it's an extended family, and you have other. So if you talk about having guests or something in reference to your home,
Yeah.
I mean, and mention the word family. I mean, I don't really think that in a way that's incriminating anything.
Well, no, it can be. So yes, you can say there's plenty of room for entertaining, right? That's not protected. But it's gotten kind of crazy that just in this last year, and that we can't call a family room a family room. We can't call a master room. It's a living room. Yeah, we can't use the term master bedroom or master bath.
It's primary.
It's primary bedroom and primary bath. We can't use the term plantation shutters, right? Because this reflects badly back in the slavery days, since most of the plantations used slaves. For me, growing up here, I'm a Gardena boy. Growing up in Southern California, I never associated plantation shutters, that term, with plantations. I just thought they were nice wide shutters, but that's the society that we are in today, and we as professionals have to be aware of the terminology.
And what about animals? So if you have animal or pets, is that not?
Well, animals are not protected class, so yes, you can have pictures of dogs. I think that might be a way to go. If you love dogs, or you love cats or goats or whatever it is, yeah, that's not a protected class, so that's good.
But if the human has a letter feeding the animal, then it's protected.
Say again?
If the human.
Oh, if it's a service, yeah, if it's a service animal, yeah, that might be a problem. Yeah, so you just got to tread lightly. When you get down, again, I don't have all the answers, but when you get down to specifics, if something comes up, give me a call, and I'll be glad to check it out. Years ago, my nephew and I, we worked in real estate together, and we've had a lot of problems in dealing with attorneys, litigation attorneys specifically, in our real estate transactions. And my nephew says to me, he goes, yeah, I'm selling this house, and this attorney wants to buy it. And he goes, I'm not going to sell it to him. I'm not going to sell it to him because he's an attorney, right? So attorneys are not a protected class. So you can do that. That's legal. You can exclude attorneys.
Can't exclude a veteran though.
Yeah, but yeah, Danny, I don't know if you can hear him, but he says you can't exclude a veteran. If you want to exclude him because he is a veteran, or because all 22 of those protected.
So if you say any word relative, if you say any word that has the word family, is that automatically
Yeah,
not a good thing?
yeah, familial. It's called familial status, and that's a protected class.
So anything relative to family.
Correct. Well, you can't say family room. I mean, that's
I see.
For an old guy like me that's used it their whole life. I mean, that's pretty crazy. Or a master bedroom or a master bath. I mean, and because we are aware of that, I hear agents using it all the time. So I mean, this is probably going to take years before it's everybody gets word. But I want you at least to know that
So I do have so the thing is, for a younger family, like you said, starting out, not saying that's a positive, negative, but I think in some cases it could be a positive, but by the same token, I guess if someone didn't have a family, I guess that you could argue that there's some prejudice there for, somebody who is not, necessarily a family. So is there a way I'm trying to think of a way where you could say, without, you referring to family, to somehow bring some of that
Yeah,
type
you
of,
can't, I don't know of how you can, other than their qualifications.
okay, I see. Well, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so, you can speak of the numbers, they've been on their job X number of years, they make X amount of money, that
You
type.
can talk about some of the nice features. So if they have a nicer fireplace. can you-
Sure.
you
Yeah,
can-
you can talk about fireplaces. Again, it's the protected classes that you have to be leery of.
So if the buyers love the fireplace or something, or swimming pool or whatever it might be.
Sure. Yeah.
You could
So
indicate.
basically,
Yeah,
it's
not-
like Christmas around the fireplace.
What?
Yeah, I don't know if you heard that, Dan. He says, yeah, you can't mention like Christmas around the fireplace or the
Okay, right.
menorah, on the, yeah,
On the mantle.
on the mantle, yeah, you can't mention that. But non-swimmers, for example, that's not a protected class. So, you talk about swimming in the pool. That's fine.
Okay. I'm trying to figure out a way to, bring some sort of personal, part of the home into the picture.
Yeah, the goal of the of CAR and of the legislature when they're passing these laws is to avoid the protected classes, and for us as professional agents to look at qualifications only, not personalities or not their different attributes that are protected or that somebody may be offended by. All right, any other questions, comments on anything? I appreciate your questions, Dan.
Oh, my pleasure.
Anything else? All right, guys, next Wednesday is our monthly office meeting. It's going to be live here at the office, 9 o'clock, Wednesday next week. We've got our new inspector that's coming. The name of the company is AAA Inspections. And it's very interesting. I don't know if you saw his Zoom meeting last week, but he uses a lot more technology than what I've been used to and what I've been familiar with. So he's actually going to be in the office here. So hopefully we will see you all next Wednesday at 9 o'clock. Thank you, guys. Thanks for attending.
Bye.